everybody. Welcome to another episode of What a Hell of a Way to Die. It is me and Nate, and we're recording at, it's spring on both of our ends. It's spring in London. Perhaps you saw a glint of sunlight today. We have...
It's actually been very sunny, shockingly sunny. Not a cloud in the sky, no rain. Highs today in like the high 70s Fahrenheit, so just unbelievably nice. Don't really know what to do with myself. I went to go, my wife is sick, I'm sick, can't really leave the house that much, but I went to go grab some groceries, and I stood outside, and then we have like a breezeway in the building complex we live in, and I'm standing out there, and the sun has been warming these bricks all day, and I'm like, wow, it's like almost hot. I'm like, I haven't felt this way in so long. Like, this is the warmest I've felt since I've moved to the United Kingdom.
Wow. And like we said, I mean, if only the UK was sunny all the time, maybe they wouldn't have done all that colonialism.
Well, hey, you know what? Climate change, it's going to be sunny. It might also be really windy and rainy in the wintertime, but it's going to be sunny a lot in the summer. Yeah, we're finally there as well. It's noon my time at the moment on a Saturday, and it's absolutely gorgeous. And I have, the fucking dad that I am, I have so much outside puttering around, prepared to do. It's like, because we're wanting to sell the house, sometime in the next, hopefully within under a year. So you got to start doing. It's like, well, this shit needs to be repainted, and this needs to be done, and that needs to be done. Got a brand new lawnmower today, so I'm very excited. Oh hell yeah, that's like a serious dad moment right there. I don't have a lawn. I really wish I had a backyard so I could do some barbecuing, but I don't right now. So I'm yardless, which means even if I was a dad, which I'm not, I would be lacking some degree of validation. We'll put it that way.
You have nowhere to putter. You can't, dads need a place where
I
they
can
just
fucking putter on my balcony and clean off because there's a million spiders that I'm trying to get rid of. Jesus Christ, this fucking country, there's spiders everywhere. Long story short, they haven't cleaned the gutters in so long. There's entire centuries of soil culture inside the gutters. And as a result, water can kind of, I've cleaned off the balcony a bunch, but stuff comes out of the gutters, like fragments of soil and things along those lines, and birds love to come and root for things in there. And one imagines that anywhere there's lots of dark, wet soil where bugs and other things hang out, there's also going to be spiders. And so basically our balcony is the spider kingdom. And I have declared war on this fucking kingdom. I'm going to start napalming the shit out of it, but I need to get my spider killing supplies. So that's my dad task, I suppose. Well, you know what? We could have a whole podcast on dad chat, but whilst we were dadding it up, some more ridiculous militarized / military fascism's happening in America. And this time it's pretty bad. So we have reports. This actually has made it into the New York Times, but started out with local reporting that a armed right-wing militia that's camping out on the border in southern New Mexico, dressed in military fatigues and carrying, garden variety AR-15s and sidearms from the pictures, it looks like, has been rounding up asylum seekers and people crossing the border in order to basically put them under arrest and then hand them over to Border Patrol. A quote from one of the members who came to New Mexico from Minnesota, he said, basically, we're just here to support the Border Patrol and show the public the reality of the border. They then paraphrased, he said the organization plans to remain on the border until the extended wall proposed by President Trump is built or Congress changes immigration laws to make it harder for migrants to request asylum. Now, I have to say, if you are a white dude with guns in Minnesota and you have so little going on in your life that you are motivated to go down to New Mexico and round up asylum seekers, I think you're a fascist.
The thing is that if I'm, an immigrant or an asylum seeker or anything like that, I don't know the laws. And if somebody is just pointing a gun at me, what is the jurisdiction here? There's really my question. Is if you go down there, you and 10 of your buddies go down there, and you're staying on the American side, but you're guarding a patch of desert, and a migrant family comes across, and they decide that they're not going to stop for you. What exactly are you doing with those guns? Because if you shoot them, that's murder. Regardless of their status, you've literally just murdered somebody. So the guns at this point are just for intimidation. There's no other reason for it. I'm sure it's we're protecting ourselves. People are not coming across the border armed to the fucking teeth. I'm going to tell you, more guns go from America to Mexico than a Mexico to America by like, 1,000,000%. So, at this point, it's, again, like you said, it's people going down there and they want to take their guns and they want to dress up and they want to play soldier, but they've got like, 50 pounds of fucking beer gut going on in front of them, and they can't really run very fast. So what they can do is they can sit in a fucking Jeep and hang out on the border and, do this, basically round people up and then call the border patrol. Like, they've gone from just like, hey, I see, something over here, and then sending it to the proper authorities, which, whether or not, but the question here is not, do we support this or not? Obviously we don't in any capacity whatsoever. But, there is a marked difference between, hey, I'm reporting a thing that's happening over here, and, hey, I'm going to take my gun and go point it at these people, and when you guys show up, come on down.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to say for the first group that you named, people calling up, doing fucking neighborhood watch, but for the border, fuck you, you hall monitor piece of shit.
Yeah.
Go home. Fuck off.
Fuck yourself.
Leave those people alone. Like, the numbers of people coming into the United States requesting asylum has actually, or crossing illegally, has decreased since the 90s. The reality of the border is that fewer people are coming into America than were before, and the fact is the people who are coming are leaving for a reason, which is that life is dangerous and hostile and basically unlivable where they're from. So if this bothers you, honestly, fuck off. The best thing that any of us can do is push for full amnesty for immigrants in the United States, and also push to make it so that they makes it much easier for people to come to this country, like, completely legally. Like, they shouldn't need anything besides just like, I mean, an ID document from their home country would be great, and then like, yeah, just go about your business, because honestly, in the United States, they need workers. They need people to do jobs, and allowing these folks into the United States, for one, improves the United States. For another, is the right thing to do morally. And finally, there's absolutely no reason to believe anyone or give credence to anyone who feels this so strongly about this, they're willing to go camp on the border and either spy on people with binos or actually harass them like these guys are doing. So I'm opposed to all of it. But I think the thing that really gets me reading this is that these guys are going around with German shepherds, wearing uniforms that look military issue, carrying weapons that are military issue. To someone who's not from America, even to someone who's from America, this is going to look like the authorities. Like, this is indistinguishable from the actual authorities. And let me, Obama voice, let me be clear. Fuck the authorities too. But this is even scarier, I think, because the idea that they're handing them over, they're basically becoming an auxiliary of the border police, it implies that they fit hand in glove with this whole security apparatus. And if you find yourself in a situation where crazy white dude militiamen from Minnesota, dressed up like Ranger Rick, are part and parcel of your security apparatus, you might be living in a fascism. I'm just saying. Now,
and I like to make the difference here too, because a lot of media is calling them an armed militia. They are not a militia. Like, they are an armed mob. There's a difference. Like, militia means a thing in America. Like, the National Guard is technically a militia. Apparently in Texas, anybody who is between the ages of 18 and 45 is considered a disorganized militia, in which, like, but the thing is that you're not a militia, you're not anything until a government entity of some kind says, snaps their finger and says, okay, you guys are coming with me. It's like, in the old Western days, a sheriff deputizing, like, you guys are deputies, come with me. Like, that's a militia right there. That's when a government entity kind of does this. So unless the government, any government, I just want a government. I don't care if it's a city, a state, or, federal. Unless they're saying, okay, you guys are coming here, you're getting paid, you're going to be doing this, that, and the other thing. Because the reason for that is because then you fall under a rules of engagement, and you fall under, laws, basically. Like, you're already, these guys, obviously, like I said, they shoot these people, they've just committed murder. Now, a migrant family coming across the border gets gunned down by a couple of good old yokel white boys. Are they really going to go to jail? Probably not. more than likely they're going to be able to get off scot-free, because, as you said, everybody is really fucking hand in hand, buddy buddy with this bullshit. From the actual border patrol to ICE to all of these dipshits. But the thing is that honestly, somebody has to be funding them, and there's my question. Because you don't fucking just leave Minnesota with your AR-15 and your PMags and changes of clothes and boots and everything, and then go down to this thing. Where is your money coming from at this point? Am I supposed to believe that all these people are independently wealthy and they're just human hunting at this point? Because, probably not. I'm sure some of them probably have a little bit of money, but more than likely not. So not only do we have an armed mob, but I have to believe that somebody somewhere is funding them. And there's my question, is where are all these dipshits getting their money from? I can't believe that they're all independently wealthy.
Yeah, another thing too is the article quotes one of the members as saying that their group includes people with military and veteran experience, which doesn't surprise me. Or correct, I'll say that again. A member of the group is quoted in the article saying that they're members of the organization that have law enforcement and military experience, which doesn't surprise me at all. ICE and the Border Patrol completely disavowed them in the sense that in a really kind of callous way by basically saying, that they don't endorse private groups or organizations taking enforcement matters into their own hands, but that according to the members of the group, Border Patrol's never told them to stand down. So I can't imagine they're particularly bothered by their presence. And I think one of the things about this too that really gets this is people watching this from afar. The audience that this intended for is, in my opinion, is two. First, it's meant to scare people who are considering coming to the United States. It's intended to say, these fucking guys are out there and they're going to get you. It's meant to seem intimidating. But for another, I think, and more importantly, it's meant as effectively misery porn for Trump supporters and people who get down on this kind of a thing. And one of the New York Times article, and to their credit for the New York Times, which is something I don't say all that often, to their credit, they included some of the insane Facebook comments that people have been upvoting on this video, which was shared of these militia. I say militiamen because really, they're basically in Afghanistan, in Iraq, and Syria, you'd call them a militia. It's warlordism, really, is what it is. But I mean, they're an armed group, okay, whatever you want to call them. Anyway, people saw this video, and there were some of the comments on Facebook were, this is what I'm quoting from the article, "Got to stop being sympathetic because of the kids," said a woman who they named. Her name was Linda Ellen Sweeney. Fuck you, Linda. "Got to consider them as collateral damage now. We're done." And that, I think, gets to the heart of who this is intended for and who responds to this message and who is really fired up about this dumb shit. These are people, these are white boomers who and white boomers of the mind, if you will, who are incredibly incensed about this fictive boogeyman immigrant that's supposedly coming over to do MS-13 or whatever the fuck. You know what I mean? And as a result, things that show them being mistreated, things that show them suffering and feeling pain, that makes these fucked up boomers of the mind happy. And so in a way, it feels as though this is created in order to be a kind of spectacle, whether or not this is something that's like a fringe group, or if this is actually like popular and there's more people than we know of that want to do this kind of thing, go out and hang out in the desert for however long they hang out and do this. The thing about it is, I feel like it's done in order to make people scared, and it's done in order to like titillate or please Trump supporters, to know that, as people like that are often want to say, that someone sees it for what it is and they're doing what needs to be done, yeah. which is I feel like, once again, is a very fascist mode of thought, that the law just isn't strong enough. The people know what's right. They're going to do what's right, even though it's not the law, because the law was written by weak people. We're strong people. That's what this is.
Yeah, we've got a massive uptick in, and maybe it's just more people are pulling out their video cameras and recording angry white people yelling that they're going to call ICE on somebody when, and literally, sir, this is a Wendy's. Please, please fucking leave, you insane person. And a lot of those people get arrested, like the people who are yelling at Hispanic people who, and the thing is, I want to go to Linda and I want to be like, what exactly did a Hispanic person do to make you like this? Like what? And I know that there is that it's surface level. There is nothing deeper beyond the glowing box making scary images glow on my brain, and then I'm just going to go do a racism now. A lot of these I want to you just if you sit them down and you're just like, can you please, like, I need you to crank up the gears inside of your brain here and just tell me what it is about a Hispanic person that you hate so much. You're in Minnesota. Like, Mexican people aren't coming to Minnesota, probably. They're a lot of them, I'm sure, are going to stay in the general areas down there. Some of them are going to, go all over the place. And you know what? I'm sure Minnesota could, benefit from more people coming up there to work, or more restaurants, or more, economy, or whatever. Like, I hate to make the capitalist argument about it, but I mean, currently we live in a capitalist society. So, like, that's the argument that I have to make with people like this. I can't go in there and just be like, I mean, borders are bullshit, honestly. And, in reality, we should all live in, self-sustaining communes that create, we all take sky gondolas, from New York to San Francisco or whatever. But, when using these arguments in the pretext of somebody who, like, retired from the police force after 45 years or whatever, you have to make it in a world of like, look, who fucking cares? Like, let them come in. Like, I'm always, Donald Trump has a, like, oh, I'm going to release all these people into sanctuary cities. Fucking come on, man. Drop them in my city. Release people into my city, because we have, places that need people. We have a need for, St. Louis City has been hemorrhaging people for years. And then the Bosnians showed up and they fixed up a lot of it, and it looks great. Now all the Bosnians are kind of, moving out now, and it's like, come on, bring some more people in. We need it. Everybody kind of needs it.
Well, also something too that I'd say is looking at this comment. I mean, the idea that you're going to look at children and say children just have to be collateral damage. You've passed beyond even the most incendiary militarized rhetoric, because the military winks and nods and says, "Oh, well, absolutely. We deeply regret it when things happen like this. With regard to civilian casualties." Even when operations are planned or missions are conducted in ways that people know are going to cause civilian casualties, they never outright say it. You know what I mean? And obviously, it varies. I mean, there's this less likelihood of civilian casualties when it's soldiers on the ground versus people doing airstrikes, for example. But for someone to turn around and say, "I don't care about the children need to die too," that to me it tells me where these people are and whether or not they can be reasoned with. And I also think something that's interesting about this too is, you'd have to really get to, this goes beyond your normal, freak out at Walmart, yelling at Wendy's, school board meeting when they're talking about maybe allowing poor students in, level of like white people losing their minds. Rarely do people say out loud, "Oh, I'm on board for all these people being killed," or I'm on board for all these people being menaced with guns, and I don't care about children. Fuck them, they deserve it too. That's just rarer, and it's weird to me that Facebook can draw this out of people, and that this kind of rhetoric can draw this out of people in a way that I'm sure the sentiment is there regardless. I'm sure that when folks get killed, when the cops kill someone who's not white, these people are happy. They think the right thing was done. When the state executes someone, they're probably happy. That's the kind of like malice and spite these people operate on. But it's very strange to me that we can see a video, we can show something like this, and it's like we joke about Stephen Miller, like fucking getting off on children's tears. Although there have been people who've worked in the Trump administration who have said that he actually legitimately does, like he enjoys hearing stories about like families being ripped apart because he's just like a fucking ghoul. But it's weird when we can look at that, and you and I can look at this video and say, holy shit, this is paramilitaries acting in cooperation with the government to circumvent law and to basically deprive people of rights, commit kidnapping. And we can look at that and say, wow, that's really fucked up. And then Linda is like, hell yeah, give me more of it. I love pain.
Linda is the type of person who, like, after something like Sandy Hook, like, the idea is, rather than, get to the root of a problem, just put more people with guns in the schools, and then that way, people won't come in and shoot anybody. It's the weird, like, mentality that goes beyond, like I said, it's all surface level. It is no, let's get down to the roots of it. And yeah, like, the idea of, like, well, these people just need to die, while I can maintain my comfort, is just an incredible, like, it's an incredible take. Like, it's insane to me that I, fucking share DNA with people like that, just on the basis of being a human being. To think like that, but again, this goes back to, your Tucker Carlsons and Ben Shapiro's, who like to talk about these invading hordes that are coming over here that are going to, take things over and, make America not white, apparently, which, fucking who cares? Like, everything's going to change. Everything changes every 50 to 60 years regardless. I mean, but
let me ask you though, have you ever encountered people in the National Guard or reserves that have, like, openly expressed that they were involved in militia activity or that they were sympathetic to these lines of argument? Like, beyond, say, right-wing talk radio, but getting even more intense? Because obviously, like, the folks who join Oath Keepers, the folks who join these militias, the folks who go down to the Bundy Ranch who are military veterans, I mean, I can't imagine that they presented themselves as Boy Scouts until the day they were no longer in uniform, and then immediately had a change of heart.
I mean, nobody has directly come out to me about it. A lot of the people that I talk to, there's always that regular level of, being a right winger in the military, where thank God Trump's gonna let us, take off the gloves to do whatever. Whatever it is that we haven't been doing in the last 17 years. Now we get to kill people, I guess. I don't know. We've been fucking doing that forever, and it hasn't worked. But nobody has ever, like, outright expressed that to me. And most of the people who, like, I feel like I know most of the people, at least in my unit, well enough to know that they would think that it's just, it's kind of weird. But I'm sure that some of them would say, yeah, I would go do that if I could, if I didn't have, a wife or a kid or, other responsibilities. But I feel like most people, like, that I know, especially in the reserves and especially in the city, like, we have a diverse population in the city, and we have a diverse population in our unit. And just to be like, no, like, well, definitely nobody's on Linda's level of kill them all and, let Allah sort them out or whatever. But I feel like there would probably be people who are sympathetic towards it. But again, they don't say those things to me, because I would also fucking nail them to a wall if they did.
Yeah, it's weird to me. I mean, I only rarely encountered people that would express this when they were in uniform, like, in terms of supporting it, like, outright. I remember meeting people when I used to work in a butcher shop when I was in high school. So this was, 18 years ago. And one of the butchers, one time, I think we had lunch or dinner or something, we had food, and he was just basically talking about how, like, these migrants are coming across the border and we need to just kill them all. I mean, and this was in fucking central Indiana, so, like, about as far from the Mexican border as you can get. And likewise, when I was in the military, I mean, I remember hearing some dudes who were in the California National Guard kind of just having a conversation in this barracks in Australia, and, like, they were on some basically, like, we hate Obama level. Like, they were basically like Kurt Schlichter types, which is ridiculous in uniform. Like, they hate the government except for the fact that the government provides every aspect of their livelihood.
Yeah,
but I haven't ever experienced this stuff.
Soldiers are my favorite.
Oh yeah, exactly. The most logical of logic-centric professions. Yeah, I just ask that question because I think about this sometimes. Who are these people in uniform, and when do they become radicalized to the point where they're willing to leave their life behind to go do a fake deployment on the border, watching roadrunners and cacti, and then also harassing migrants and apparently pointing guns at them in this video, and just generally being horrendous pieces of shit, vigilantes. It's weird to me because there's an aspect of this where I feel that someone has to be people. To me, I feel like someone has to really genuinely believe that what they're doing is combating a threat. And I don't think there's a significant amount of difference in terms of the mentality between a person who goes into a Christmas service and screams Pizzagate is real, and a person who puts on a fake uniform, and goes down to be a vigilante on the border. It takes a similar level of conviction in a conspiracy. But obviously, humiliating yourself and being a weirdo in a church service is one thing, but driving literally all the way from the northern border to the southern border of the country in order to live out some, I don't know, fucking desert warrior fantasies takes a larger amount of conviction. And so I do think I take your point, and I do honestly think that what you said about the kind of Tucker Carlson thing, I mean, he is an example of someone who's normalizing this to the point where I think that you're, a guy who should be just like enjoying his retirement and fucking painting racist slogans on his boat is instead, taking the fight to the enemy in southern New Mexico.
Yeah, and let's be honest about this, because these are not a formed actual militia, because these are not a part of a corporation that's a part of any government. These guys are basically kidnapping. Like, that is like,
oh yeah,
because
for sure.
If all these people that they rounded up, like, any one of them should have been able to stand up and say, I'm leaving, and you can't do anything legally about it. And the thing is that as soon as anybody did that, that a line would be crossed into more illegality of, no, sit down. I'm going to point a gun at you. I'm going to hit you. I'm going to force you to stay here and wait for the authorities. And the thing is, they don't have any authority to do that themselves. So what this is basically, this is a video of a kidnapping happening. The citizen's arrest is not a fucking thing. I don't know what, like, it's not like this. It's not. Maybe we'll talk to a lawyer and figure out what a citizen's arrest is. I'm going to go ahead and say that, like, when you literally, leave your life behind from Minnesota to go hang out on the border and point guns at migrants, that doesn't fall under the citizen's arrest. It's not sitting on a bank robber until the cops show up or anything. You're literally doing kidnapping. And again, it's, these, whether they're asylum seekers, whether they're people who are crossing the border, quote, illegally, according to any kind of immigration laws, go fuck yourself if this is what you do. Because honestly, like, I'm not a open borders kind of person, but I am show up with some ID and we'll stamp you a social security card and send you on your way.
I feel like you should clarify that, because I think that open borders as a concept is different than zero border control, in the sense that I don't think that that smuggling is good. I don't think that. I think that in order for you to get to the point where you don't need to have any kind of border at all, you have to have gotten to a point where there's a complete normalization across borders. But I definitely think that people should be allowed to come to America if they want to. And I mean, my take has always been, people are like, well, what about criminals? And it's like, well, hey, you know what? If someone's a criminal and then they are either incarcerated or on parole or reporting to their local authority for whatever they do for like penance for that crime, then yeah, they can't come because their local authorities got control of them and they're not allowed to leave. But it's not a question of should they be allowed to come. It's the question from where they're leaving from. Are they allowed to leave? And if they're allowed to leave legally, they're allowed to leave. It's like, that's how the justice system works.
Let me tell you something. I've had crimes happen to me. None of them have been from an illegal immigrant.
And here's the thing, like even if they were, that doesn't mean that. I mean, I've had crimes happen to me. Some of the people who have committed them have been white and had blue eyes. Does that mean that people with blue eyes are criminals? No, it's people who committed a crime. And I find it so, like, it's just such a ridiculously ignorant argument. And so, I went from the kind of person who's like, we should fix our immigration laws so we can give people more visas each year, to the kind of person who now is like, you know what, actually, borders are fucking stupid. We don't need them. We absolutely don't need them.
We can get into a discussion of how borders work, one way or the other, because I think no matter what, people would form their own borders regardless. Like, You drop the borders of America, cities will create borders. Fuck, I've got a fence. I've got a border around my house. Borders are borders. They're going to be there. But also, I do feel like you should be able to, like, if you're like, my country is falling apart and, I will die if I go back to it. America should be like, oh, that sucks. You should come here and live here instead. Come fucking get a job here. We'll send you to school. We'll give you healthcare. We'll not murder you. That's the open border policy that I have.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you something kind of funny. California has state border controls for produce, or at least they did at one point. Because in 2011, I was driving on my way back to Fort Benning, Georgia, from Alaska, and came through from Oregon to California. And upon entering the state, I got met at a sort of border checkpoint by a California like produce agriculture, something along those lines, but he was like in a uniform, and he basically asked me if I had any fruits and vegetables. And I was like, yeah, I think I've got like some oranges, and I had to give them up because I wasn't allowed to bring in fruit.
Gestapo down there.
Exactly.
People talk about how like open and free and wonderful California is. You can't bring in some fucking Alaska oranges.
Damn, bought some tangerines at the commissary at was it Fort Lewis in Washington, put them in my cooler to have snacks for my drive down, and the fucking Gestapo took them. It's bullshit.
If only you showed up with like almonds or wheat or something like that, they'd have been fine with that.
But here's the thing. I guess I just look at it when I think about borders, and I think that you and I can have a discussion about it, and you can say, okay, should there be like authorized points of entry and you can't cross anywhere else, or should there just be, no fences anywhere? I don't know. But what I do think is that in terms of whether or not the border is a thing that you have to have permission to cross and that it's closed to everyone without permission, I think that's an idea you can get beyond. And once you get beyond it, you come to realize how artificial it is and that it's not necessary. And it doesn't, in its current incarnation, it doesn't guarantee safety. It just guarantees poor people can't move. That's really what it is. And so to me, at least, I feel like we can segue to our next portion, but watching this, I'm just reminded that it's absolutely a mentality that's drilled into people that the border is sacrosanct, even though the border means nothing. And the border wasn't really enforced for a really long time. And borders change over time. Passports weren't a thing before, I think, like the end of, like after World War I. Like not in any meaningful sense for people to be able to enter countries. Like, and the American border, the southern border, has been flexible over time. It has changed significantly, and there's lots of people who have found themselves accidentally on either side because like the border has changed. And so I look at this and I just realize that for someone for some racist Facebook mom or some crazy retiree from Minnesota to be this fired up about like the realities on the border, like it makes you understand how integral the concept of like the wall and the moat, the fortified border, how integral that concept is to a certain kind of racist, to a certain kind of xenophobe, conservative, whatever you want to call it. Those kinds of people who are really hung up on the idea that America is a fortress that you have to earn the right to be a citizen in, and everyone who hasn't passed whatever test that is, and go figure, wow, some people seem to just get it granted, a priori, whereas other people have to earn it and still never seem to earn it somehow. Basically, the idea that America is this fortress, and we should keep everyone out, and we should be kicking our own people out on a constant basis because they're not worthy, and that's somehow going to make us stronger and better, as opposed to just paranoid and insane. Also, everyone's addicted to opiates for some reason. I don't know why.
Did you see favorite representative and friend of the show, Duncan Hunter, going down to the border? Oh, you didn't see this? Oh, it's great. He went down to the border to do like some like, look how easy it is to just cross the border, and that's why we need laws. And he did like a live on Twitter or whatever. And somebody was like, did you literally cross into Mexico because you broke your parole and you're going to go to jail for that right now? And then he had to be like, no. I was like 100 yards away from it.
That's the thing. That's what I'm saying. Like anyone should be able to cross the border. But like, obviously, if you're, currently under custody of the state in some capacity, then you're not supposed to go. Like, don't break the law that way. Be smart about it. Representative Duncan Hunter, gamer, dude who's constantly in trouble with the law, vapor extraordinaire.
He's my favorite dumbass. He's my favorite, like, proof that meritocracy doesn't exist in America.
Duncan Hunter is also one of those people that you realize that being a military veteran opens doors. And like you said, meritocracy is a sham, but that you can be a huge dumbass and be allowed into the meritocracy solely because of whatever weird guilt sort of exists about, you know, whether or not we're giving veterans a fair shake. Like, we've gone too far, and now it's like certain people, obviously, because there's numbers of veteran groups that are completely marginalized, and I don't want to speak for all of them. But if you're a white dude with a college degree and you're a veteran like Duncan Hunter, the world is your fucking oyster compared to the average person in America.
Yeah, this
qualifying
is why,
that to not sound like a huge asshole, but you know what I mean.
This is why I'm kind of excited about when people like the Koch brothers, you know, die and move on, and you know their legacy is handed down to like their one ginger son that sells like really shitty
the crazy t-shirt, the polyester Hawaiian shirts that are suitable for the boardroom and the discoteca,
right? Who just like advertises them all on like these, like his dad's yacht and shit like that. It's like, who's buying these other than you and other, like, you know, overweight rich billionaires who have no sense of style or sophistication whatsoever? They all look horrible. I mean,
they look terrible.
I support a Hawaiian shirt, but man, those are bad.
Yeah. So speaking of proper dress, neatness, and grooming, and whether or not something looks good or not, we have a little bit of a niche military story that we want to talk about, but I feel like it might provide a window for those of you, the many fans, surprisingly, who are not veterans, but who are interested regardless. This might provide a window into why the military is so insane about things like little rote, menial, mundane chicken shit tasks.
Yeah, so if you don't know, technically the military is not in a war state. Now, we are at war, but you know, we talk about ourselves as wartime and peacetime, whatever, you know, garrison. Which garrison is a military base that's, you know, in America. And a lot of times, you know, in Afghanistan, after a long enough period of time, places like Bagram and Kandahar were just kind of considered garrison because they're like so incredibly safe, other than like the occasional rocket that, like, you know, would hit a mile away from you and you know, hit the poo pond or poo lake or whatever they got down there in Kandahar. So, you know, technically we are not a wartime, because the thing about a wartime military is you kind of get away with some stuff. You get to drop a little bit in your standards because, you know, hey, we just got back from, you know, a 24-hour operation. We're, you know, on the move the whole time. Yes, we haven't shaved. We're going to go take a shower and go to bed. And so Major General Dave Furness, whose last combat deployment to Afghanistan was in 2010, has taken it upon himself to start snapping the Marines back into order, because apparently they're all disgusting.
So I want to read from this, actually, because I want to talk a little bit my experience, because this is something that has always fascinated me about why I could never be a lifer and why I had to get out of the military when I did. It's because I just can never bring myself to give a shit about this stuff. But this is from a memorandum. There was a policy letter given by General Furness to the entire 2nd Marine Division, establishing policy for standards, etc. He writes, Marines and sailors of 2nd Marine Division. In my travels with the Sergeant Major and Command Master Chief throughout the division spaces, I have noticed a significant decline in the basic discipline of our warriors. Because of the 2nd Marine Division has the majority of personnel assigned to Camp Lejeune, we will take ownership of this problem and fix it, all caps, immediately. We have allowed Marines and sailors to walk around with long hair, non-existent or poor shaves, unserviceable boots and utilities, and improper civilian attire. There are weeds growing around our buildings and workspaces and trash everywhere but the dumpster is where it belongs. These are just a few examples of the lack of discipline seen across the board that will not be tolerated in this division any longer. Our Marine Corps embodies the highest professional standards. How we look in garrison, how we maintain our equipment, weapons, barracks, and workspaces is directly related to how we perform in combat. A general lack of attention to detail and corrective action by peers and leaders results in lower discipline and destroys the foundation on which the Marine Corps was built, ironclad discipline. As leaders, we need to all step up to the plate, reestablish and enforce a basic daily routine that promotes habits of thought and action, efficiency and adherence to standards that are the hallmark of our nation's force in readiness. Part of what makes us different from our sister services in American society, is the regimentation of our daily lives. Adherence to orders and standards helps foster mutual trust in one another and produces the attention to detail required to be effective when called upon to fight as our nation's 911 force. Below is a basic whatever daily rotation, et cetera, et cetera.
So before you launch into it, I thought the Marines were already doing this. So it is very surprising to me that on Camp Lejeune, which is one of the main Marine bases, that like somebody had to put out this like, okay, you guys will clean your rooms every like this. This is like Jordan Peterson, but with like a commandant, like with a couple stars. It's just like, I need all of you to be lobsters and go clean your room.
Yeah, it's weird to me because, I mean, for one thing, okay, yeah, got it. But I mean, this is one of those things where you don't have to put the entire division on blast in a memo. You could probably just, there's ways to handle this as a leader that you can get this done. I mean, and one of the ways that I'll give you the officer way of doing it that I think actually is appropriate versus being the officer who decides he wants to like 5-finger point at people. More than anything else, it's like working with whatever subordinate person, NCO officer under you, and just like show them the stuff and be like, hey, is this acceptable? And like, obviously the answer is going to be no, and they'll fix it. That's the way you go about it. Like, but putting out an angry memo and being like, I'm really mad about the trash, and I'm really mad about the weeds, and I'm really mad about your Marines not fucking shaving. It's like, I remember in Korea, our brigade commander launching into a tirade because a soldier from one of the subordinate battalions, the brigade commander was coming back from church service on post, and he lived on post like anyone else. And he was driving back on the road at Camp Casey, and he saw a soldier riding his skateboard on like a Sunday morning with a cigarette in his mouth down the main road, unshaven. Now, all right, soldier, you're a fucking idiot. Come on, man. But on the other hand,
look, I'm a staff sergeant, and I would fucking hem that kid up. But go ahead.
But okay, so here's the thing, right? Get off the road, dumbass. What's wrong with you? Now that I get. That I get. But the idea that a colonel, a 50-odd-year-old colonel, has to be like, I am fucking furious that this young man did not shave and was smoking a cigarette, not in the appropriate position of attention. Like, who the fuck cares? And that's the thing, is that you have to care. You have to pretend to care. I have to pretend to care. Like, if my soldier isn't shaven on post, like, I mean, don't go into the fucking dining facility and get hemmed up. But like, if you're in your barracks room or you're like out smoking a cigarette outside, or you're like at the shopette, I don't want to have to care. You know what I mean? I don't want to have to care. And yet you have to care because guys like this care. And that's so much of what makes up the daily military routine that makes it so insane, is the idea that I have to care whether that soldier is, because apparently you're not allowed to smoke unless you're standing in the kiosk or something. You know what I mean? That kind of shit. Where like, you're only allowed to smoke in designated smoking areas. You're not allowed to smoke and walk at the same time because apparently that would be indisciplined somehow. You're not allowed to, obviously you're not allowed to be unshaven. Obviously you're not allowed to ride your skateboard down the street. And I think about this though, and I'm like, but if there were no other cars on the street, why am I caring so much? Like, why do I have to rationalize caring about it? And I realize, because that's just what the military is. Being mad at this shit.
No, look, first off, get off of the street, because I don't want to have to do the fucking safety stand down because some dipshit fucking hits a grate or something and cracks their skull open. Like, the thing is like, I understand where this general is coming from, because I do believe that discipline on this level of, doing these things, translates to discipline, into the job. But again, like I said, I am surprised that these things weren't happening beforehand. And I'm with you on the point of like, this general should not have put his whole place on blast. What you do, like for me, if I was a general, bring in my colonels, bring in captains, anybody captain and above or majors and above, and say, look, this place is fucked up. Why is it fucked up? Here's what we're doing now. Put it out. I would not go on and this guy, he went on like he went on a podcast, basically a Marine podcast, to be like, we're gonna fucking change these things. And like, how fucking 2019 is that a fucking major general goes on a podcast? But he makes these like, we got to make these changes. We're going to do these things, and I'm going to put everybody on blast. And like, so it's, every morning, division-wide reveille at 5:30. I'm wondering if that means Saturday and Sunday too, because probably not though. 5:35 to 6, troops are expected to conduct hygiene activities and room cleanup, leaving blinds at half-mast. Physical training in barracks common areas cleanups will follow from 6 to 8. Mandatory platoon formations and inspections 8 to 8:15. An hour for lunch. Back to work at 1, and then wrap up the day with another formation at 4:30 to 4:45. Depending.
I mean, there's one part of me that's like, fuck that. There's another part of me that's like, oh wow, you're done for the day at 16:45. Damn.
Come join the reserves, man. We bitch and moan when 1700 comes around. We haven't left for the day.
Yeah. This don't be a captain on staff though, getting ready for a great big rotation for something, because then it's like, yep, 1700 formation. Okay, going back in. Gonna go get dinner at 1800 and be in my office till like 2200 tonight. Long story short, though,
a captain.
Yeah. Well, long story short, I find that that's something that I think is very difficult to communicate to civilians. That all of the work on bases, or primarily the work on bases is done by soldiers. So like the grooming, the cleaning, etc. Painting the rocks, cleaning cleaning the outsides of buildings, mowing the grass, edging, etc. All these things, those are done by soldiers. And so it's time out of your training, it's time out of whatever the hell you're doing. You have to put people on details to do these things, to go edge the fucking lawns around the buildings, or mow the grass, or trim the hedges, or whatever the hell, I don't know. And so a lot of this stuff, like this is on units, but there's an extent to which you cross a threshold, and at that point you're paying more attention to like Better Homes and Gardens than you are to like doing your job as a military professional. And I look at this when I say, I have, infantrymen. I don't really want to have to care about whether or not my infantrymen have, cut the requisite number of dandelions. I care about whether or not they can shoot their fucking rifles and they have all their, sensitive items, and that they can do the training that we've set out for them. But that part of the whole thing about people complaining about, oh, it's easier being downrange than it is in garrison, is that garrison has shit like this, and garrison has like cleanup weeks, and garrison has sergeants major and general officers roaming around being like, that yard looks fucked up, and so you wind up having to care. But I guess it's just one of those things that, much like our discussion on borders, I'm a little weirded out by the idea that you have to lose your mind because somebody didn't shave on the weekends. For one, because back when uniforms were green and men were hard, when like my dad was in the army, like the standards were actually less strict back then, and folks had full on like just porn stashes, long ass hair, like your hair couldn't touch your collar, but you could have like 70s bangs, so it was nowhere near as strict. And furthermore, as long as you show up to formation with your haircut and your face shaved, like when you have your next formation, I can't, to use a British expression, I can't be fucked to care. I just can't. Like, and so when I think about this, about like the soldiers are out unshaven on the weekends, it's like,
yeah, no,
look,
and
look,
therein lies, the demarcation for me. Like, yes, like you said, you need to be in formation, looking like a soldier. But like, if you don't shave on a Saturday, fucking guess what? I'm not shaving on a Saturday. Do you think I shave every day, like when I'm not, on a drill weekend? Fucking, of course not. Why would I?
Yeah, and if I had to report, I was doing weekend training, of course I'd shave every morning. But I mean, I was an officer. I was a captain, and I if I shaved on the weekends, when I lived on post, I'm sure, I'm looking back on it, I imagine that I probably shaved if I had to go somewhere on post, like if I was gonna like go anywhere that was around anyone in uniform. Like if I was going to go to the PX, I would shave. I was going to that kind of a thing. But certainly if like cooking food and hanging out around my place, or if I was back when I lived off post, damn sure wasn't shaving. If I had to go on post, I would. But you know what I mean? But for soldiers who live on post, like, I don't know. Obviously, it's a little bit more frustrating because like you can't leave your barracks room unless you're like squared away. That's annoying. I mean, that gets annoying. But even more so, I think when I think about this, I think about shaving, and I think about the yard work, and I think about all of the stuff that we do that just wastes soldiers' time, and all the things that become really, really important, like whether or not you're training for exactly 2 hours a day doing PT versus actually like a real workout that can break you the fuck off in 45 minutes. You know what I mean? Like, I would rather do if I was PTing, if they're like, you have to do 2 hours PT with my soldiers, like I would, if I was back in the military now, I would much rather make them stretch for like easily 30 to 45 minutes before we did like a break off workout. And just like spend a lot of time stretching and maybe warm up before we did a long workout, like actually go for like a jog and then stretch and warm up and work out the right way, as opposed to the army way, which is like, nope, extend to the left, arch, and then just fucking, it doesn't matter if you get repetitive stress injuries, like that's not the army way, we'll get you a profile and then kick you out on a med board. Like, I see all these things and I just see how dumb and rigid they are, and then you realize that until you can break out of that mentality, like, you're just fixated on defects. Does that make sense? You're fixated on the ones who aren't shaving, and you're fixated on the yard that isn't mowed, and you're whereas in the grand scheme of things, this could all be resolved in a common sense way that doesn't involve people having their lives ruined or their schedules fucked up, or just generally being shit on by some jackass who's got a higher rank. If it weren't for the mentality that screams, this is important, fixate on it, to the detriment of literally everything else.
I do believe that, discipline is obviously a requirement for anything, not just the military, anything. I've been working at home for 4 years. Trust me, I have discipline on what I eat, and I always put on pants before I go to work, rather than just sit around in like my bathrobe or anything. You got to have some kind of discipline. But also, we have a retention problem in the military, and it's because of shit like this. Because a lot of people just, you get to the end of it, and you're just like, man, I kind of like what I do, but fuck, I want to stop getting hemmed up every time, I don't shave and walk into the PX, or every time that I don't have my fucking glow belt on at the right time, or whatever. Like, those are the things that, like, when people talk about how they hate the military, like, I mean, I'll tell you, it's, I'll go into, deep in-depth politics about it, but like most people, they'll say I hated it because of I had some shitty leadership, or all these stupid fucking rules that I had to follow that were dumb, and they took away from my ability to do my job, or anything along those lines. And that's what's going to get people to leave any job, military, IT, HR, whatever the fuck you do. If there's all these dumb rules like that goes beyond, like, if I work at the T-Mobile store down the street, and they're like, hey, you come in, you have to wear these colored pants, these colored shoes that are black, pants that are black, and a T-Mobile shirt or whatever. And I say, okay, and I do that, and then afterwards they're like, okay, you go do whatever the fuck you want, because we don't care anymore. You're not on our clock anymore, so go do whatever you want. That's how the military should be operating. Like, if I'm not on duty, fuck off.
Yeah, and something else I point out too is that I think that to take this into like the dimension that I think is worth exploring when you talk about what constitutes discipline, I think that one of the ways where the military gets confused on discipline, and instead seems to fixate on outward signs of submission, if that makes sense. Like, you're submitting to whatever authority when you perform these things, not to standard but to time, or not to any kind of common sense standard, but rather to a very like obsessively delineated form that's been given to you. I'll give you an example. Like, for me, what discipline means constantly getting better at PT. Discipline means figuring out what you're weak at and working at it and improving it. Discipline means not fucking drinking and smoking so goddamn much. It means actually eating right, eating healthy. It means finding things you need to improve to be better at your job and getting there. It means setting, standards for yourself as far as what you want to do, as far as making progress, and then just performing those and objectively evaluating them. But I guess the thing for me is that I would rather have the soldiers have latitude, within have way more relaxed standards as far as things like haircuts, for example, or shaving, but basically be able to, reward them based on performance, getting better at things like, being better marksmen, being better at PT, like learning languages, learning skills that are going to be useful, like hopefully being able to volunteer for things like to use certain kinds of equipment that would make them more useful, things along those lines. And the more that, as an Army officer, a former Army officer, I'm fixating on like whether or not my soldiers are edging the lawn correctly, or whether or not they've shaved, I feel like it detracts from it. It's not discipline. It's obedience, if that makes sense.
Yeah, maybe the military is just training soldiers to be dads one day. They're like, look, one day you'll have a lawn, so go pick up sticks and put them in this pile, and then go pick up the cigarette butts, and then go mow the lawn and edge it, and it's Saturday, and your entire Saturday is going to be taken up by this. But then afterwards, you can go have a beer and bitch about stuff. Like,
you can yell about Obama when you're all said and done.
Yeah. To be fair, I did learn some stuff about lawn care from the military, so maybe it's not all completely bad.
I guess my take is
more like, I was gonna say I already know how to pick up trash on the ground.
So my thought is like, what if soldiers could have any grooming standard they wanted, just so long as like they were able to like they kept it neat and clean, and they were able to put on their gas mask, which, I mean, obviously a beard, you can still put a fucking gas mask on, and lots of other militaries around the world have figured this out with no problem. What if you could have as long a hair as you wanted, as long as you put it in a bun or whatever when you worked out, and you could wear your helmet without it being a problem? What if you could do all that shit, but then also if you fucked up and you failed to meet, like if I didn't meet my, like, imagine this is a punishment for Duolingo, this would be hilarious. Imagine if you lost your Duolingo streak and so then you had to get a high and tight and shave. Like, imagine if you didn't meet whatever the standard, like if there was a standard that you were trying to reach for, like to meet your improvement or whatever, or you fucked up in a big way. It's like, oh, you thought you were going to rock a man bun and a beard. Nope. You were going to be you're going to be boot ass private, high and tight, fucking shaved clean. And we're going to make you wear white socks and tennis shoes everywhere. All right. That's my idea. That's sort of like discipline. Like, okay, there can be consequences for failures and such, but it's not dumb rote obedience, and it's not this slavish devotion to, I don't know, a one-size-fits-all solution. And it stops grown men from having to worry about whether or not somebody fucking shaved, because God knows it's so frustrating, and God knows it's something that I'm really glad I don't have to care about ever again. I
just think about, like, if somebody who, like, that kind of like if you lost a battle, you had to cut off your hair in various cultures, based on movies that I've seen. You have to cut your hair when you lose a battle or whatever and throw it onto the ground. That's how somebody's like, rather than just be like, weren't you a corporal last time I saw you? Now you're a PFC. And it's just like, yeah, it's just like you see your buddy is just like completely like face shaved and is just cue balled up top. It's like, fuck, man, what did you do? It's like, I didn't score over like 250 on my PT test, and well, here I am now.
Them's the breaks. Although I will say the one thing that stops me is that, my God, soldiers are disgusting when it comes to personal hygiene. And so there are times when I'm like, yeah, it's probably easier if you just shave every hair on their head and spray them with a hose, because y'all, if you're any junior soldier listening to this podcast, and God bless you if you do, fucking take showers. My God. Like, once you've gone long without a shower and you've realized how much of a precious quantity they are, like, you just, I don't know, like, what it takes to get soldiers to realize, like, it's a good thing to shower and brush your teeth and like wash your clothes and have more than one set of PTs, Yeah. But
I'll go a day without a shower here and there, but also I don't sweat my ass off on a regular basis. If I'm in the field, or if I'm, in military, like, doing PT, like the PT that the Army makes me do usually makes me sweat. So I would take a shower after that. And I've always been like that. And I've run into those people, and yeah, I don't fucking get it. It's like people make fun of like people who go to gaming conventions and like, oh, they're disgusting. They don't shower. They're just, sitting in this funk. Like, man, the warriors of this nation are no fucking better.
Yeah, I guarantee you, and please sound off on social media, in the comments on SoundCloud, anywhere you're listening, if you have either witnessed or had to issue an order for someone, like a direct order for someone to take a shower. Because I have seen it. I've literally seen soldiers be put under orders so that someone had to escort them and watch them shower every day because they wwere so disgusting.
Phenomenal.
So...
yeah, and so let me tell you, when people say about how great the nation's soldiers are and how we are the few, the Marines who are the few and the proud, and the Army who are being all that we can be, or whatever our slogan is right now, understand that really they take any kind of lowest common denominator, as long as you can pass the ASVAB with some sort of capabilities that shows that you can read and add 2 and 2. And a lot of times some of those people are just absolutely disgusting.
To paraphrase Orwell, people sleep peacefully in their beds at night because sweaty fucking teen virgins stand ready to do violence on their behalf or something.
Oh my God, Nate. Before we close out, I got to tell this story. So we got a new CSM, and he's good guy. He seems nice, as most CSMs who have been in the military for long enough. They aren't complete assholes. We have this PFC who the CSM was going around and having all of us stand up and introduce ourselves and say something, and we have this fucking PFC who stands up and is just like, I'm PFC, blah, 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 and this, that, and the other thing, and I still have my V card, and then sits back down. And I was just like, and to be fair, this guy that was his last drill weekend, and he was just like a complete shitbag. He was like super overweight, and not smart and don't know how he got through basic training, let alone to my unit. But now he's gone, and it was one of those just like I don't understand the fucking mechanics of your brain right now. But like every part of me wanted to just like, I don't know, hold him underwater or something. Just
I got one before we go. And I may have told the story before because your boy has a memory like a sieve when it comes to what I've said on this podcast. But I had a soldier show up. He had a funny name to start out with, and I won't tell you his name because I don't want to dime him out. But our ops sergeant major encountered him as he was basically getting in processed at battalion before they sent him down to our company. And ops sergeant major came up to him and said, "Hey, private." And he stands at parade rest, and he's like, "Relax as you were." And he's like, "Private, tell me a little about yourself. Like what And he's like, my name is X, sergeant major." And he's like, "Yeah, but like, what'd you do in high school? Tell me a little about yourself." And he's like, really just did a lot of heroin, sergeant major." Anyway, let's just say we found out about that, as you can possibly imagine. And that guy also told one of the most insane stories I've ever heard, because we were sitting around at NTC. We'd missed Thanksgiving. If I remember correctly, all the other battalions had gotten home for Thanksgiving, but our battalion had decided to stay and do more training after an NTC rotation, and so we all missed Thanksgiving in our battalion, and so we had to and folks were sitting around there just bitching, but like, oh yeah, at least we're gonna have Christmas at home before we deploy. And these guys had been like, okay, well, what's the worst Christmas you ever spent? And all these folks who were like deployed to Iraq and that kind of thing were telling stories. Or what was the worst Christmas memory you ever had? And this same guy was told this story about how he, if I remember correctly, he said, and I'm going to do it in his voice, well, yeah, like, I got to my friend's place and he had this heroin, and I was like, I thought we could do it. So, we did it, but then like, I guess we weren't supposed to. And his roommate came back and like, he found out we had taken it all. And so like, they thought we had stolen from like their dealer, and like my friend didn't know. And so I couldn't get a hold of my friend. And so like, we were trying to call him, and this guy, his roommate, like they decided they're going to kill us. And so they like tied us up and put us in a car trunk and drove us out into the desert outside of Las Vegas. And like, yeah, they were digging a hole, and we were like crying, like, no man, don't do it. But they were going to shoot us. But then like my friend called him and said, oh no, it's cool. Like, I've got him. I'm going to spot him for this. And so they just like drove us back and let us go. And that was Christmas. It was really fucked up.
Wow.
And we were all just like, what just happened? Like, this isn't a normal Army story.
What happened to that kid? Is he still doing it?
He got kicked out of the Army for a DUI. He pissed hot, and then he got kicked out of the Army for a DUI. Yeah. But I think he's doing good now. I mean, as far as I can see, like, I follow him on Facebook, and like he seems to be a little more normal now. I hope. He's married. Like, I think he's good. I don't know. But yeah. Anyway, so you can imagine that worrying whether or not that kid has shaven every morning is definitely the number one priority in your life.
All right, everybody. So follow me at Army Strength. Follow Nate at In These Deserts. You can get us on YouTube. I'm still doing Thursday Night Lives. I do them on Twitter as well, and generally pin them up to the top of my profile. So you feel free to jump on and watch those at any point. We also put the episodes up on YouTube as well, if that's your preferred method. But also, make sure that you follow us on Patreon. Anything that you guys can give to us is fantastic. I have set up a new, we're going to be doing the zine. I've got a lot of people who are interested and working on stuff for it. We're going to be, so if you're at the $5 level, you'll get that digitally. But if you're at the $10, you'll get a physical copy, and then some other fun things inside of it. I just got some a rock or something magnets for your refrigerators or anywhere else that you need. Gonna be sending out some no step on Snick Gadsden flags too, so that you can put those on your Velcro hats. Swap out your Blue Lives Matter, Red Lives Matter, American flag hats, and pop one of those on up there. And just a lot of other stuff planned. So and again, if you guys have any suggestions, anything that you want to be added onto here, we are all ears. If you've got a story to tell and you want to come on and tell it, we are happy to have you there too. We're gonna have we got a Coast Guard guy, coming on. We've got, I'm going to be talking to Brian from Street Fight about Triple Frontier pretty soon. I've only watched about 35 minutes of it so far. And it has high divorce dad energy. I'm just going to say very high divorce dad energy. I mean, that's Ben Affleck's like character is I don't want to get back into the shit, but I need the money, because of my divorce and my kid, because I'm a divorced dad.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. So very excited to continue on that one. So, and as always, if anything, we always appreciate likes and comments and pats on the back and sharing of the podcast. If you can't do anything financially, anything that you can do, even if it's telling us that we suck, but actually having constructive criticism, because I get told we suck quite a bit, but nobody is constructive about it. So be better about that. Anyway, we'll talk to you next week.
Yeah, have a good one.